Before the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa became a GT-only race for many, many years, it was all about touring cars. And admittedly, once the demise of Group A changed the format of touring car racing, it became a rather more insular event, and the lure of touring car racing started to wane. That's when it moved to GT racing. But that's not to decry the efforts of the drivers and of the teams that raced here in the halcyon days of the touring car era of the Spa 24 Hours. And that's recreated this weekend with an impressive entry that has been garnered by Peter Auto, taking a variety of cars from a variety of periods, including there the ex-Thierry Tassin Ford Sierra. You've got a number of cars with a proper Spa 24-hour history. You've got some cars within the entry that have been, if you like, made as tribute cars, such as the Eggenberger Copy Sierra and also the Ford Escort there that Mark Lemmer shares with Simon Graves, the Broadspeed entry. Real mix going from the early 70s all the way up to the 1990s. And if you're wondering why there's a Porsche in the entry, well, Porsches for a time did get away with being a touring car. That is the car of Serge Leibens and Jean-André Collard. The 635 CSI that's just gone through is the car of Jean-Loup Rion, the former Eggenberger car. Eggenberger you tend to think of wrongly as purely a Ford team, but they had great success with BMWs and then a year with Volvo, in fact. That is the Mark Lemmer Simon Graves Escort, which is not a period Broadspeed car, but built by an ex-Broadspeed engineer. Mark Lemmer sharing it with Simon Graves. It's a Barwell built car. I think that's Mark's helmet behind the wheel of it as he comes up towards Pif Paf. Mark Lemmer busy running the Barwell operation in the 24 Hours, as well as having a bit of fun behind the wheel, and he's caught up to Eric Kvick, number 99 BMW, which is about to hop out of the way. And as he comes up now towards the Cours Paul Frère, this a 30-minute qualifying session. There, another of the Fords that show you, again, the sort of heritage of the 24 Hours from that touring car era. The Ford Capri 3100, that's the Wim Kool-driven car. Not all of these ventured out yesterday. One or two of them had mechanical woes, and so have come out today for the second qualifying session. But the drivers, certainly Wim Kool being overcautious, you could argue, at the moment. Yesterday, the fastest of the cars that we had was one of the delectable BMW CSLs. In the background, you've got one of the Volvos, the 240 Turbo, that takes you to around 1984, 1985, coming out of La Source. There, number 14, Ford Sierra. That's the car that Thierry Tassin drove in the 24 Hours back in 1988 with Romain Feitler and Jean-Claude André, the great rally driver. Didn't finish, it had an electrical problem. Christophe Van Riet is the man behind the wheel of that car. And powering up the hill, Christophe Van Riet, I think, missed yesterday's session, but somebody who's got a nice collection of cars racing in the endurance GT race, the endurance legends for the 1990s onwards GT cars. There also swinging through is the BMW M3 that Paddy Shovelin shares with Andrew Jordan, and the Watson's livery, and a little bit of a lockup from the Sierra. By this stage, of course, the Spa 24 Hours had gone from being a World Touring Car Championship round in 1987 back to a European Touring Car Championship round in 88, but they were becoming very much the domain of the Sierra RS500s or the BMW M3s, and Sierras were dominating touring car racing not only in Europe but down under as well. And the Fords, the cars to have, although by 1988 there was the Nissan of Alan Grice and Wim Percy that was doing selected rounds of the European Championship with good pace. So Christophe Van Riet then in the RS500 comes out of Pouhon and looking to see what the lap time can be at the end of this. Half an hour doesn't necessarily give you that many laps, but the team's deciding, again, if it's a double driver entry, how to structure this session. Christophe Van Riet comes out of Pif Paf and not being affected by the traffic ahead. Got one or two drivers already having transgressed. Fred Bouvier, winner of the 24 Hours, under investigation for crossing the pit exit white line. So up through the Cours Paul Frère comes Christophe Van Riet. Sierra time is a good one. Personal bests in the first two sectors, although absolute bests being offered up by the BMW M3 in the middle sector, the Paddy Chauvelin Andrew Jordan car, which makes one think it's Andrew Jordan at the wheel. And also going well in sectors is Michael Camoan's 3-litre CSL BMW. Real mix of ages here, as I was saying earlier on. You've got cars from the early 1970s right up to the 1990s as a bit of a fight for Christophe Van Riet. Gets the car up through the chicane. In comes the power, the back wags, and he makes his way now up over the timing line. And that puts him second, a 2:43, with Andrew Jordan having gone fastest in the BMW just up the road, a 2:39.483 for Andrew. The car owned by Paddy Chauvelin and Michael Cullen, and they normally share, but I've never thought I'd ever say this. Michael Cullen has gone to a Taylor Swift concert this weekend, so Andrew Jordan is put into the car instead. Yes, I did say a Taylor Swift concert. Out of the hairpin with now a bit of gravel on the road. You see the great variety, Escort Mark 1, 3-litre CSL BMWs, Porsche 964s. This is the Andrew Jordan Paddy Chauvelin BMW M3. It is a new build. It's not a period touring car, a period M3, yes, but made into a racer of late. And in the Watson's colours from Macau, that takes you to 1983, 1984, the Eggenberger BMW Italia car. Jean-Louis Rion at the wheel of it, but in period, and that colour scheme from memory is a 1984 livery, would have been Umberto Grano and Helmut Kellerner's, who took on the Tom Walkinshaw Racing Jaguar XJS's with great success. And the 635, which was a well-developed car after a couple of seasons already in the European Touring Car Championship, and Rudi Eggenberger, the late Rudi Eggenberger's team, running the cars, very much the benchmark up against TWR. And Jean-Louis Rion, who I think we said in the context of the GT session earlier, has a lovely collection of cars, and the 635 was not only in great shape, but just used to make this absolutely fantastic noise. Race circuits weren't as constrained with silencing regulations as they are nowadays, and so for many of the European Touring Car Championship rounds, you used to have 20+ 635s that had this symphonic noise as they all blasted around. And Group A was probably the first rule set where you had lots of nationalities all running to the same regulations, and therefore when the European Championship came to that country, lots of people from the domestic championship would join in and supplement the entry. Out of Speaker's Corner goes Jean-Louis Rion, sharing that car with Nick Padmore. He will, I'm sure, put Nick in towards the end, but Jean-Louis Rion comes through Pouhon now. Such as talking about the popularity of Group A, Donington 1983, so big was the entry that they had to run a non-qualifiers race on the Saturday evening. The main race was 3 hours, so the non-qualifiers got a 90-minute race on the Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. Porsche through, number 61. That's the car of Serge Leibens and Jean-André Collard, which runs in that GT class. But as touring car racing was struggling a bit internationally towards the 1990s, the entry supplemented at Spa by allowing in some of the less modified GT cars. That's how the Porsche crept back in. Although many, many years ago in Britain, of course, Vic Elford drove a Porsche 911 in the British Touring Car Championship. Mark Lemmer being gesticulated at by the BMW. That might be Matt Holmes' car that went by. Picking up pace now, look, 53 Ford Capri, Wim Kool, the Cologne Capri, as they were dubbed, built by Ford's Motorsports arm in Cologne. And not only were they great touring cars, they also attracted great drivers of the time. Formula One drivers would come and drive the Ford Capris. And Wim Kool, with a road to himself, looking good. He's done an absolute best look in that first sector, and a personal best in the second. And another car that makes just a fabulous noise. And of course, initially, the cars drop value because they're no longer competitive, and then they go off and race in other categories, and then suddenly there's a historic class and they're back on board again. But for example, Vince Woodman's Cologne Capri, this might actually be that car, raced and won every race in the first year of Thunder Saloon racing, when it didn't really have anywhere else to play. Now, of course, they're much sought after in historic touring car circles. Up to the line comes the Capri, 12th Wim Kool at the moment, and let's see whether that's going to put him up onto the front of the grid. It does, quickest of all, 2:36.8 then for Wim Kyle. Good lap ahead of the Gordon Spice Racing liveried Capri. And there, number 93 BMW, Simon Alexander's 1975 3-litre CSL, fabulous car. That was BMW's answer to the Cologne Capri. You can see how touring car racing changed a little bit after the Group 2 era to Group 1, which is the Capri's era. Much less outlandish, no wings, no flared wheel arches. But the BMW, Simon Alexander, absolutely mint that car and comes up the Camel Straight, being chased by the Ford. We've got quite a few Capris of differing vintages in the entry. That car goes to the late 70s, 1978. And the Gordon Spice Racing livery on the car. Gordon Spice, a winner of the event with Teddy Pillette with the Martins. That's the Andrew Jordan M3 through once again, that he shares with Paddy Shavlin. That very distinctive BMW M3 bark. Andrew Jordan throws it through La Source. It is Andrew's helmet aboard the car, so we're confident in saying it's him. And on that last lap, he did a 2:37.7, so 9/10 down on the Ford Capri. You'll find different battles within the different categories of age of car, but it's just a wonderful recreation, putting everybody out on track together here. Andrew Jordan, the 2013 British touring car champion, and making his way up towards Les Combes now. Half an hour they get for this session, 18 more minutes on the clock. The M3s that were launched for the 1987 touring car season and locked out the first 7 places in the first World Touring Car round that year at Monza, only to be excluded for the materials that were made for the roof. 43, the Alfa GT V6, down through Pouin, that car of Guy Favre. And at the same time as you had the Rovers, the Jaguars, and the BMW 635s in the 2.5 litre class, it was just wall-to-wall Alfa GT V6s, which was another car that made this fantastic noise. The Luigi Racing Team, the Jolly Club, all ran them with great success. What a noise, what a lovely noise. Lello Lombardi was another one that drove for the Jolly Club within the ETCC in the green and white toe-tip colours. The only lady to have scored half a point in a Formula 1 Grand Prix. Guy Favre's car then, a little bit down in terms of the overall timing, but the race divided into different groups for the specification of the car, the age of the car, the engine size of the car. So everybody has something to race for. And the one outstanding element of all of this is just how well presented the cars are. And there are lots more touring cars here that aren't runners, that are static displays. Another of the CSLs there in the pit lane, Philip Skemama's car. Period colour scheme with the lower rear wing. The likes of Niki Lauda came through the BMW CSL ranks. Now, the Belgian cigarette, Belgian oil companies represented. Number 1, there the BMW of Matt Home. That is a car with not just one Spa win to its name, but 2. Thierry Tassin, Jürg Müller, Alexander Bergstaller in 1996, Didier de Radiguez, Eric Ellery, and that was a 1997 winning car. And the one ahead of it being driven by Eric Kvik. Matt Home bought that number 1 car from Japan. And it still has the map of Spa sellotaped to the roof of the car as it did for the race that year. So the Japanese collector, I don't think, really understood quite what a rare and valuable car he had. Michael Kammermann here, the Swiss driver in his CSL, comes up over the line. Down towards La Source. That now goes fastest within the session. Michael Kammermann doing a 2:36.641. Something rather different from America, Christoph Schwarz with the 1976 Dodge Charger. I said there was great variety on this grid. And it's like an aircraft carrier in contrast to some of the touring cars. But a bit of stateside iron to add to the entry. Christoph Schwarz being a little bit cautious. In the background, you'll see the BMW M3 in the DTM colours, the Tic Tac Mints livery that Alan Berg drove going back to 1991. There it is. The DTM regulations allowed 2.5 litre engines, as and against the 2 litres in the so-called Super Touring age. But the BMW M3 rather dwarfed by the Dodge as they come up through the Cours Paul Frère. And now through on the inside line goes the BM. What else can we offer you? Toyota, another good touring car brand, the Celica of Dominic Holvert. An early Celica because that car is a 1972 car. And you see on the back of it, as he comes into the pit lane, the sticky tape. That was always something that drivers used to try to blank out the glare of the headlights coming from behind. Super slow-mo shot of the lights are wobbling and the car riding the curve. That's the Michael Kammerman CSL coming out of the chicane. Shares that car with Stefan Glaser. And there, Kurt Thiem in the Luna Caravans coloured Volvo. I don't remember Kurt Thiem racing one Imperial. I remember him racing against Volvos because he was the DTM champion in a Rover Vitesse. But that is a sort of Ulf Granberg, Per Strussen car. It's not Chris Esser. Ignore that. Chris Esser is not number 122. He was on an early entry list, but that's most definitely Kurt Thiem in the Volvo. Chris Esser is driving an Opel Kadett, so we can discount that. And up towards the chicane comes the Volvo. Ulf Granberg had his own team. The other quick Volvo drivers by 1985, you had Thomas Lindström and Gianfranco Brancatelli for Eggenberger, as Kurt Thiem brings the Volvo into the pit lane. Where do we go next? More Escort Mark 1s. 227 is the car of Kerry Michael, who has been a regular Ford racer for many, many seasons. This very smart Mark 1 Escort that he's no stranger to success with. He's also been a Mark II competitor at Goodwood in the Jerry Marshall Trophy race, but this Mark 1, which he's raced at Spa before in touring car races, comes wheel lifting out of Bruxelles down the hill. One or two drivers just being warned about track limits, including Matt Home in his Spa 24 winning BMW. And there is, to the pit lane, Christophe Van Riet, number 14. That car with the bonnet up. The team at work, but hopefully nothing horrible taking place under the bonnet. Christophe Van Riet stays behind the wheel as the Alfa GTV, the 2-litre car of Christine Beckers and Petra Carlier, comes towards us. That was, as you can see, promo team car in period. The GB Enterprises gets out of the way of the CSL of Simon Alexander. The Alfa not going as rapidly as one might have expected. That car, I think, has had a long pit stop. It's not yet done a proper lap time. Now, that is a car that is from the very last age of this being a touring car race. Oliver Muren's Volkswagen Golf. Believe it or not, that car finished fourth here in 1997, by which stage it was very much a sort of super production spec touring car race, the 24 hours. It was driven by Jean-Francois Almerul, Raimund Baumschlager, Jörg Seidel, but fourth overall it finished, which showed you where touring car racing had become, because most other nationalities were running super touring, but only for sprint races. There was no long-distance touring car formula, and it was partly with that the RACB started to talk to Stefan Rattel about what could you do with GT cars here. But the Golf, another period car, heads down into Bruxelles. The number 152 BMW, the Armand and Sam Adrian's M30 that Eric van der Poel drove, comes towards Bruxelles. That car from 1988, still in the Group A era of touring car racing. And the very familiar Belgian lease plan colour scheme adorning it, with the BMW colours on top of that. 11 more minutes of the session to run. Volkswagen Golf, you can tell partly because of TDI written on the side and partly because of the black smoke, a diesel, and making its way up through the piff-paff. Another of the CSI 635 BMWs there is the car of Christian and Nicola Traber. So just like you had in period, lots of 635s adorning the grid, and that car being chased by the Tic Tac Mints M3, Mark Verhaeghe's car. So the session helping to determine the grid, but from our purposes, it's a chance to wallow in some nostalgia and have a look at some not only interesting cars, but interesting liveries as well. The DTM spec M3 through on the inside, replay here of Andrew Jordan's M3 coming across the traffic. Ah, no, Paddy Shovelin now at the wheel. They've done the driver change, so Paddy Shovelin having to cope with the Toyota ahead. Wriggles around the outside. As there, heading up towards us, is the Matt Holm-driven M3. Sorry, 320i, I should say, not M3. That's your 97 Spa 24 winning car. Didier de Ragades, who made a name for himself initially on two wheels before Didier de Ragades came to car racing, touring cars and sports car racing with great success. And that car has been a real hit with the fans in the paddock. It's run by the Jordan Racing team, Mike and Andrew Jordan's team. And Matt Holm drops downhill. That is 7th overall at the moment within the classification. Goes towards Pouen. And sweeps through that long looping left-hander, ready to get back on the power and drag out the other side. So at the moment, it is the BMW that is the quickest of Michael Kammerman and Stefan Glazer by 2/10 from the Ford Capri of Wim Kyle. Over the timing line goes the M3, or the old timing line, the endurance pits. Paddy Shovelin now having taken over that car and is coming up to yet more traffic. Paddy, who came out of the Ferrari Challenge many years ago with his mate Michael Cullen, has done a lot of racing in British GT, for example, in historic Formula 1 Ferraris through the Corsa Clienti scheme. We've seen him racing more recently in historics. He and Michael Cullen have been on a kind of spending spree, buying Lotus Cortinas and Mini Coopers and all sorts of things that the JRT runs. Number 29, the Volvo of Fred Bouvy, the Volvo that takes you back to the early 1980s, the car of Jean-Marie Barthes, Michel Delcourt and Pierre Dieudonné, who we'll hear from tomorrow in the course of the race. Pierre now instrumental in WRT and a vastly experienced touring car racer, but that is one of his old mounts, the Volvo, that is from the early 1980s. By about 1985, once the Eggenberger squad had got their hands on the Volvos, that car becoming more competitive. The 1984 car, that one, but by 85, when Eggenberger was running them, they were winning races, and by 1986 it was the RAS team that was running in the Nordica colours. But from 1984, the Volvo, stirring memories. And there, going straight on, is Philippe Truffier's Marlboro M3 at La Source, finds the escape road around the back of the gravel trap. And look at that, inch perfect, misses everything solid, gets back on track. That in the Marlboro colours of the Bugatti team from memory. So just under 7 more minutes of the session to go. Christophe Van Riet back out again in the Sierra RS 500. Lots of understeer as he fights the car into piff-paff and the back wriggles its way through. Drivers always said that the power kicked in pretty suddenly in an RS 500, but Christophe Van Riet with lots and lots of understeer. He still got it, I think, coming down through campus. The front wheels having to really work hard to get that car through the corners. So Christophe Van Riet up towards the end of a lap, chipping away at his times, 6th earlier on. There, back out again, is the CSL from Philippe Schemama. And he's about to drop back, I think, behind Eric Kvick, who is looking for a way by on the inside line. Does go through. That's the 1995 Bugatti car. Out of Speaker's Corner. That was another one that raced at Spa and the Nürburgring in the 24-hour races of that year, with Ivan Muller, Ingo Hoffmann and Alex Bergstaller as the drivers. And then the car was sold off to Australia, where, amongst others, Charlie O'Brien had some good results with it in national races. But Eric Kvick, who we've seen in the 24 hours, both in the touring car era and the GT era, is the man behind the wheel as he comes then up to the piff-paff. So the race tomorrow, I think, will have some battles within the classes, but it's going to be interesting to see not only what the weather does and how that's going to affect the order of the grid going into the race, but who the brave drivers are. 40 minutes it's going to be tomorrow, so it's a lengthy-ish race. Eric Kvick heading up towards the line, and through the sectors, 2 improvements. The Bugatti-built car, really aimed at the super production era. The majority of nationalities by 95 had adopted super touring spec. Up it comes, heads towards the line, and the Kvick Motors run car breaks the beam and goes fourth fastest, 2:38.1 for Eric Kvick. Out of La Source, quite a few drivers have decided to get as much track time as they can out of this session. Not fearful of the machinery. If they were designed, I suppose, to do 24 hours, there's no reason they can't do a half-hour qualifying session. So drivers getting as much track time as they can. 74, another of the CSL BMWs, that's the Michael Kammerman, Stefan Glazer car, back out again, and he comes up against the Toyota, easily nips through on the inside. You can't really miss a Batmobile in the mirror, can you? You know it's coming. You can hear it coming, probably. And so through it swoops. You have to say that car presentation and preparation, outstanding. They might be old cars, in quotes, but all very, very well presented. Peter Auto that runs this Heritage Touring Cup, putting together a really good entry for this weekend. Up the curb goes Michael Kammerman. This is the car that's fastest and looks like it's going to end the session as the quickest as he comes then towards the line. Kammerman grabs a gear. Much more modern BMW, but not as quick up the road. So Matt Holm gets out of the way. Michael Kammerman blasts through. From that early era of touring car racing, from Group 2 age. Down to the chicane, and 2.5 minutes on the clock. Michael Kammerman swings right, swings left, comes towards the timing line, and breaks the beam. Let's see what that lap is going to be relative to previous ones. Improved in the middle sector, and the lap time is the best of the session. A 2:36.388 with another lap I think he can probably ring out of the car, but he'll get the checkered flag at the end of the next lap. Good old-fashioned H-pattern manual gearboxes, none of this sequential business that touring cars have these days. And Michael Kammerman being respectful of the machinery, given its age. Now that car getting on for just over 50 years old, comes up the hill, but still, just like the Capri of the same era, a real head turner. Gets past the Alpha 2-litre, keeps out of the way. There through, out of Les Combes comes Kammerman, and just over a minute and a bit left on the clock. These cars will race tomorrow. They have a relatively early start to their day because, along with the GT cars and the other more modern support races, they're all done and dusted long before the 24 Hours of Spa gets underway. So the touring cars at 1:10, and then the GT historic race in the build-up, part of those centenary celebrations, starting at 2:15. All of that after we've had GT2, McLaren and GT4 races for the current generation of support series here. 93 BMW then up to the end of the session because the flag is imminent. That's the car that we've had Simon Alexander doing good things with in this session. So the last few cars up towards the line, and a really good eclectic mix to highlight how touring car racing has evolved over the years. from Group 2 to Group 1 to Group A, and then to that sort of super production age. The flag will be out now. Yes, there it is, as Simon Alexander crosses the line. One or two drivers having had a lap time deleted for assorted infringements, but although the drivers are taking it seriously, it's not a championship round. It's very much a chance to enjoy a rare outing for these cars and for the drivers around the Spa circuit. They're up to the end of the session. The Bugatti BMW, Eric Kvick, still pressing on, fourth quickest, heads towards Blanchimont. But interesting, isn't it, with the modernity of some of the cars, how you've got an early 1970s front row, Michael Kammerman and Wim Kyle, with the CSL and the Cologne Capri, as they would have been in period, if you like, taking each other on and sitting on the front row of the grid provisionally. The Dodge Charger terrorising the little Alfa out of the way. In the background at Blanchimont, Eric Kvick up towards the line. No, going to take the flag in the pits. So I think pretty much most people now have taken the flag. There is 88 BMW through. That's the car of Philippe Scamama to round out its session. And the cars go straight back down the old pit lane, the endurance pits, ready to be reunited with the teams. A little bit of work to be done, and then they will be back in business tomorrow. The Dodge Charger, not a car you want to stand in front of, I wouldn't have thought, with all that weight behind it. Heads in. Paddy Shovelin absolutely flat as he comes through Blanchimont. It might be a bit cycloptic, that M3, with only the one light working, but it draws attention to itself as he comes now down towards the braking zone. Wriggles his way through the left-right sequence, up towards the line, breaks the beam, and Paddy Shovelin on his last lap does a slower lap, so doesn't improve, 2:41. Simon Graves and also Kerry Michael with their Escort Mark 1 staying out. Mark 1 Escort shouldn't really be able to get ahead of 635 BMWs, but it's allowed at the end of the session, I think. So these cars on track tomorrow for the sole race. The GT cars get one today and one tomorrow. The touring cars just the one, and that will be streamed at 1:10 local time tomorrow. That's Kerry Michael taking the flag in his ultra smart Mark 1 Escort. And tomorrow we'll have a chance to not just enjoy the race, but wallow in the history of some of the cars as well. So down the pit road heads Kerry Michael. And we'll have a quick look at the results in a moment before the cars head for the pit lane. There's one or two lap times to be deleted after that session, we understand. So let's have a quick look at the highlights of that session. A chance to enjoy some of the cars and the liveries, with the M3s and the CSLs getting themselves together early doors. The two very distinctive 320i's from Eric Kvick and Matt Holm running together as a pair, and the Volkswagen Golf TDI taking you back to an era when it finished fourth outright, durability being key. Andrew Jordan was quick early on. Christophe Van Riet likewise in his Ford Sierra RS 500 behind. And ultimately, the Eric Kvick BMW for fourth fastest, Paddy Shovelin and Andrew Jordan third in the Watson's liveried car. This was Paddy Shovelin encountering traffic. Wim Kyle second in the Capri RS 3100, a car that started gently, but it got well wound up as the session went on. And Michael Kammerman, Stefan Glazer in the BMW CSL, taking the top time by just 0.4 of a second. BMW fastest at the end of the session. And there in super slow-mo, the BMW looking fantastic as it comes through the chicane. The lights are wobbling, but shows you the stresses that go through a car into the chicane. So let's have a look then at the order. Michael Kammerman and Stefan Glazer quickest from Wim Kyle, and then Andrew Jordan's time ahead of Eric Kvick and Philippe Scamama. Then the Porsche of Liebens and Collard ahead of Christophe Van Riet. Matt Holm was 8th, Oliver Meurens, and then the Adriaan's family with Mark Lemmer 11th, Jean-Louis Rion's BMW 12th, and a little bit further down, Patelis Christopherou and Kerry Michael 18th and 19th in their very smart Ford Escort Mark 1s. At the bottom of the times, Fred Wu of his Volvo didn't really get a proper lap time in, but that should be a car to watch tomorrow with a great mix for tomorrow's race. Join us then for the race tomorrow from 1:10 on the stream. For now, though, from Spa, from touring cars at least, it's goodbye.